You know, we all want what's best for our pets. It's that simple. And for years, the message from the pet food aisle has been loud and clear. Go grain-free. But is that really based on solid science, or is it just incredibly good marketing? In this explainer, we are going to break down the real data behind this massive trend. So if you're a pet owner and you're trying to figure out the right thing to do, you're in the right place. And hey, if you like what we do here, a quick like and subscribe really does help us keep these explainers coming. All right, let's get into it.
So, this is the big question, isn't it? Is grain free food some kind of miracle diet, or is it just a marketing myth? For so long, it's been sold to us as the natural way for our pets to eat. The simple solution for everything from itchy skin to a healthier life. But the science? Well, the science tells a much, much more complicated story. Our goal today is to cut through the noise and separate the facts from the marketing hype.
Okay, here's our game plan. We're going to start with how this whole trend just exploded, the gold rush. Then we'll peek inside the bag to see what's actually in these foods. After that, we'll look at the health scorecard, the pros and cons, before diving deep into the huge heart disease controversy. We'll also tackle the big allergy myth, and then we'll wrap it all up with the final takeaway. First up, the grain-free gold rush. Before we can even talk about the science, we have to understand the psychology here. How did this one idea get so powerful that it completely changed how millions of us feed our pets? And believe me, the scale of this thing is just staggering. This is not some small niche market. A 2021 survey showed that in huge markets like Germany and the US, almost a third of all pet owners were actively seeking out grain-free food. This wasn't just a fad, it was a full-blown global phenomenon. So why? What was driving this? Well, research shows it all comes down to a few very specific beliefs. The number one reason? Allergies. We're definitely going to come back to that one. But people were also looking for limited ingredients and were convinced that grains were just useless fillers. These are the ideas that really lit the fuse. Okay, so if millions of us are buying bags with grain-free written on the front, what are companies actually putting in them instead? Let's pull back the curtain and look at the real ingredients. Now, this is maybe the most important point to understand. Grain-free does not mean carb-free. It's not even close. Grains like wheat and corn are just swapped out for other sources of carbohydrates, usually things like peas, potatoes, lentils, and chickpeas. Both groups do the same job. They provide energy and fiber. Now, when you look at the averages in this table, it seems pretty clear, right? Grain-free diets tend to be higher in protein and fat. But, and this is a huge but, look at the overlap in those ranges. The source material is really clear about this. There's a ton of variability. You could easily find a grain-inclusive food that has way more protein than a grain-free one. That label on the bag, it doesn't actually guarantee a specific nutritional profile at all. And let's just bust this myth right now, the word fillers. This is a marketing term, not a scientific one. It's what we call ingredients that we think are just cheap and useless. But the science is crystal clear. Ingredients that get labeled as fillers, like corn and wheat, actually provide essential nutrients, energy, fiber, amino acids. They absolutely have real nutritional value. All right, now for the main event, the health scorecard. We've seen what's in the bag, but what does it actually do for our pets? What does the research say about the real pros and the real cons? And what the research shows is a really clear trade-off. On one hand, there are some potential upsides. Using legumes can lead to better blood sugar control, and getting rid of grains might reduce exposure to certain toxins. Plus, some studies show dogs just think they taste better. But the other side of the coin has some really serious potential risks, and that's what kicked off a massive controversy in the vet world. This risk is so important it gets its own section. We're talking about the potential link between some grain-free diets and a serious heart condition called dilated cardiomyopathy, or DCM. This is probably the single biggest concern in the veterinary community right now. So let's unpack the investigation. So this didn't just come out of nowhere. That started noticing some worrying signs around 2014. By 2018, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, saw such a spike in cases that they launched a formal investigation. That led to a huge report in 2019, and the research is still very much active today. This is the number that really got everyone's attention. 524. That's 524 pets, mostly dogs, that were diagnosed with this serious heart disease while eating diets that were almost all grain-free.
For the FDA, that number was too big to be a coincidence. It was a major red flag. And here's a direct quote from the FDA's report summary. The most important word in that whole sentence is correlated. They found a statistical connection. When they crunched the numbers, they saw that dogs with DCM were way more likely to be eating these grain-free foods, especially the ones packed with peas and lentils.
So let's be really precise here, because this is the critical part. What we know is that there's an association, a correlation. We also know that a lot of these dogs got much better when they were switched to a different food. What we don't know yet is the exact cause. We don't have proof that the food causes the disease. Scientists are still trying to figure out the how. Is it a nutrient deficiency? Is it something in the legumes that blocks other nutrients? That's the billion-dollar question that's still unanswered.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the number one reason people started buying this food in the first place: allergies. The marketing has hammered this idea that grains are the bad guy. But is that what the data actually shows?
You know, if grains really were the main problem, you'd expect to see them at the top of this chart. But the actual data from diagnosed food allergies tells a totally different story. The most common troublemakers are actually animal proteins. Look at this. Beef, dairy, and chicken make up most of the cases. Sure, wheat is on the list, but a dog is more than twice as likely to be allergic to beef as it is to wheat. And that brings us to the final verdict on allergies. An allergy is just an immune response to a protein. And since pretty much every ingredient has protein in it, any ingredient can technically be an allergen. Just taking out the greens does not magically make a food hypoallergenic, especially if you're just swapping in other ingredients that could also cause a reaction. So after weighing all this evidence, the marketing hype, the actual nutrition, the risks, the benefits, what's the final takeaway? Where do we land? What should we really be focused on? Well, it turns out the science suggests we've kind of been asking the wrong question all along. It's not really about green versus no green. The real keys to your pet's health are way more fundamental. First, is the diet nutritionally adequate? Does it meet all the established standards? Second, is it balanced? Are all the nutrients there in the right proportions? And finally, and maybe most importantly, is it right for your pet? Your specific dog or cat with its own age, breed, and health needs. That's what really matters. And that really brings us to the final question we should all be asking ourselves. In this huge search for what feels natural or healthy, have we been focusing on the right ingredients for all the wrong reasons? The evidence seems to suggest that a healthy diet isn't about what you take out. It's about what you put in and making sure it's all in the right balance. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found it helpful, you can support our work through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description below. We'll see you next time.